The Dark Queen of Mortholme is an indie game that flips the Souls-like atmosphere on its head, where victory in this final boss fight is not a bridge to a happy ending, but a barricade to it. Watching a YouTube playthrough may have one think, the queen stands in the way of the hero. Playing the game yourself might have you think, the hero stands in the way of the queen. But truly paying attention to the story via the dialogue will make you realize the queen was perhaps her own obstacle this whole time. This video will delve into the chapters you see on the screen right now. And yeah, let's start. The game begins with the queen sitting on her throne by herself. A royal underling comes, tell her someone has intruded the castle, and then dies. The hero approaches and challenges the queen to a fight, telling her that her reign of terror ends today. The queen retorts, saying that the hero is too weak to even think about defeating her, and a duel begins. Unfortunately, the hero is not competent enough yet, and dies just as quickly as the royal underling. You, as the queen, get rid of the body after effortlessly defeating it, only to find that the hero has surprisingly returned mere seconds later. And this notion, the fact that the hero can continuously return to attempt the battle again, will become pivotal to the game's themes, which I'll mention later in the video. With each time that the hero revives and reattempts the battle, he learns to dodge the queen's attacks and survive just a little bit longer and take a little bit extra health. And as you'll see later in the game, he also learns to upgrade his gear. This process of growth is shown in both the gameplay and in the conversations that the hero and the queen exchange prior to each battle. However, the queen experiences comparatively non-existent growth. The moves she's capable of doing, as you see on the screen, are half of all the moves she's capable of doing. The other half you'll only see once she gets down to 25% health. She remains fervently attached to her belief that one who isn't powerful can never be powerful. One who isn't capable can never be capable. The hero failed to dodge her attack the first time, hence, the hero should fail to dodge her attack every time. And she seems to almost take offense to the notion that this might be untrue. Yet despite this, the hero doesn't buckle. He doesn't change his fighting tactics just to appeal to the queen's false beliefs. Their conversations reveal how his mind endures and how the queen's worldview begins to change in ways even she doesn't expect. In my first playthrough of the game, after 9 battles, the hero takes slightly longer to return, to which the queen comments on how quiet her hall has gotten. The hero returns with a golden sword, apologizes for the wait. The queen asserts that entire armies have done less to her, and the hero asks, "You didn't miss me then?" To which the queen can either feign that she didn't miss him, or say nothing at all. So this poses 2 questions already. Why is she starting to grow attached to the hero, and why does she feel averse to admitting as such? The game does not provide explicit answers, and to me, the true literary weight comes from attempting to find answers to these questions and in tying them to the real world. The battles with the hero and the conversations they exchange give the queen a release from the pain of her circumstances. But to verbalize this to him contradicts the view of herself that she wants to believe: immortality, invulnerability, stoicism, and possessing inherent and unending superiority. Why this dichotomy? I think the answer better fits the next chapter, especially with additional context of the game's later events. Anyway, after the hero fights with his golden sword, dies, and returns, he asks the queen what she thinks. She has the option to say it won't help prove his point or ask where he got it. The latter choice reveals he found it behind a waterfall after beating a, quote, Colossus Revenant, as he thanks her, saying that the battles they had helped him improve and prepare. Tells the hero how kind it is to credit her while on his, quote, whimsical little adventure. But when he responds suggesting she leave her castle as well, she finds it ludicrous. unsure what she would do or where she would go. Both options lead the hero thinking she is trapped, while the queen is adamant that it is deliberate in accordance with her status. Whether she is physically stuck in her ways, emotionally out of fear, or ideologically out of ego is left up to speculation. I'm inclined to think it's a mix of the latter two, particularly because the queen shows active resistance to the idea and seems almost offended by it. When the hero brings her down to 25% health, she enters her second form, arguably the most emotion she shows in the game. This could be an instinctive reaction to avoid death, but is surely heavily influenced by her aforementioned fears. She claims the hero insists on pushing limits even when it isn't possible, and calls him naive to think beauty exists at all the limits, implying he refuses to believe what is natural law, impossible to defy. The queen goes as far as to find it condescending when the hero talks about always having hope, and that he learned that on his journey to eventually reach her clutches, as well as during their numerous battles. In fact, we don't fully see her open up to the idea of change until she is certain she will die. Prior to what the queen anticipates is her final battle, the hero asks what will she do now that she is in the way of the inevitable, her death, as opposed to what was the other way around this whole time prior. She can say that she will give it her all, or that she will accept defeat with her head held high. The former accepts effort and the risk of failure, what she once deemed beneath her, and the latter accepts weakness that nobody is exempt from nor unjustified in possessing. When she has finally lost her entire health bar and is about to die, the hero repeats the line he introduced himself with, "Your reign of terror ends today." The queen has the option to say yes or no, and the first option has her acknowledge a new sensation, one that is alien to her. She hopes that death could bring change for her, and what binds her shall be gone, and the hero acknowledges that she already has changed, before driving his sword into her chest and ending the game. While few would outright claim that change is bad or change isn't real as explicitly as the queen does, the fear that underlies such a mindset is something we all share to some extent. To form a new view of the world or a new personality necessitates breaking the current one. To form a new view of the world requires a period of uncertainty about it. To break something familiar, even if it's flawed, or to navigate the unknown, instinctively feels dangerous. This mentality goes beyond the individual and flows into the framework of our society. When someone holds firm to an ideology we admire, we praise their resilience, their courage, their loyalty. But when someone shows the same devotion to an idea we disagree with, we call it stubbornness, naivety, pride. Earlier I presented the parable of why the queen would remove the hero's body with an apparent affection, yet continue to dismiss him as merely a weak challenger when they speak. To answer this question, let's ask another. On what basis does the hero remain the hero? We have seen him die in unique ways, several times, change his armor, change his weapons, and partially change the way he speaks to the queen. But what remains consistent, what remains unending, unchanging, is his core commitment to the idea that failure is a step towards success. So long as this mentality continues to be, he continues to be. Acknowledging weakness in his fighting style is akin to a psychological injury. It hurts, yet it can heal to some extent, and the broader mentality lives. The queen goes through a far more dramatic change, not to a portion of her worldview, but to her entire ethos. In that sense, we can say she was died and was reborn. Obviously, there's a balance to the amount of change one should undergo, and they should have some degree of firmness in their principles. Hence why, despite the changes the hero goes through, he never abandons his goal to defeat the queen. The key detail is that the queen didn't know why her destiny was to rule eternally and always be the best. The closest answers we hear from her are implications of natural order that never receive basis beyond merely having been spoken. In her defense, we all have that ignorance to some degree. Like us, the queen may ask herself why she believes in a certain thing. Why do I sit on this throne? Because I'm the Dark Queen of Mortholme. Why am I the queen? Because I always have been and I always will be. Why did I become one in the first place, and why won't my reign end? Because it is in my nature. Why is it in my nature? Etc. If she continues to ask herself, she can't truly get out of this infinite regress. Eventually she has to stop, not because she's found an answer, but because the spiral is itself unbearable. And yet, if she stops without an answer, what is left? One must at least find some basis to derive meaning from their worldview and their circumstances, some point in which they can stop and still have some reliable foundation to their values. The queen never finds this foundation. We see no evidence that her reign serves anyone, not even herself. No joy, no legacy, no connection to her people. Her only companion is fear, fear of change, fear of what lies beyond her throne, fear of the questions she dares not answer. Her true form is one that she either views as hideous or suffocating, yet can't admit to regardless. She hates who she is, and nothing else in her existence rectifies that harm or justifies her present state. Only her fear of what else there could be, perhaps related to the infinite regress I mentioned, maintains her state, and the absence of meaning she chooses control, because control at least can silence the unknown. So what are we to make of this? The hero who embodies change, compassion, and perseverance helps the queen arrive at a moment of genuine self-realization, only to strike her down the moment it happens. Why? Was it justice? Was it mercy? Or was it contradiction? And can a man still be a hero if he kills someone just as they learn how to live? When I first reached this point in the game, I had no idea why the hero would kill the queen after she'd finally changed. I came up with 6 theories, each revealing something different about who the hero might be or what the story might really be about. Retribution. He thinks she deserves death as a result of her, quote, reign of terror, and her sudden change of heart doesn't change that fact. But in hindsight, this theory is weak because we don't get any idea of what she actually did during her rule. Purpose. He thinks this is his purpose, and that to abandon it would nullify all his previous efforts. Does this make him a hypocrite after all the time he spent talking about growing as a person and accepting newness? Well, no, because we already talked about how one should have a sense of anchoring to their core roots, and how the hero had the heart to continue despite his constant deaths, clearly making him distinct from the queen's insistence on her ways. Masochism. He's a masochist, as the queen called him earlier when she first entered her final form. This would mean all the things they said to each other earlier was just an effort to drop her guard and rub salt in this final wound. But this means assuming he was inauthentic with everything he said all along, which isn't provable. Shared mortality. He is certain that she can revive the same way he always does. After all, he isn't truly aware of why he can and what would make her different. Mercy. He thinks that based on the life she lived, death is a mercy, to spare her the pain of her existence, or to force her to accept change, since the slightest hint that she could continue to live would compel her to cling to her ideology forever. Lesson over life. He thinks that dying with the lesson learned is better than living without it. We talked about the conversation they have when the queen is about to die, and she says, yes, I'm experiencing a new feeling, failure. But what happens if you choose the other option? The queen says, no, I couldn't keep up with you. And the hero responds, not as you are, not after you helped me grow into who I've become. Rest easy now. Linger on through the mark you've left on me. And then she dies. While the queen's change was ideological, the hero's change was actionable. The queen was a dynamic character in the sense that she had grown to accept a new way of thinking. The hero, on the other hand, puts his way of thinking into action. The hero believed anyone can change, push their limits, grow better, etc. Now the world around him, in its natural course of events, puts that to the test, to see how far he is willing to go before abandoning this idea. Perhaps this is why we admire people who stick to ideologies we agree with. The difference is that the game suggests he derives meaning from it, based on his dialogue, even if he can't fully articulate why. because of the infinite regress phenomenon mentioned earlier. The queen is also tested on how firmly she can maintain her commitment to her ideology of stagnation and natural hierarchy. But she commits not out of finding meaning, but out of her aversion to consider alternatives. She can't find a reason not to leave her castle because she doesn't know what's beyond it. And she can't find a reason not to abandon her throne because she doesn't know what makes alternatives unideal. Additionally, since her test grows in severity, but she doesn't grow in return, she gets pushed to her inevitable breaking point. So the queen had her epiphany. Now what's next? Pay close attention to the death scene. Regardless of which side she stands on, the queen is stabbed, and her form seems to dissolve into the hero's blade, into his direction. There's something intimate and final about it. Not intimate in that sense. Calm down. From this moment, we can speculate two interpretations. Her literal essence is in the sword, and she can revive. If we go by the implications of Souls-like settings, and the queen's description as, quote, the most powerful being of her world, we can imagine she might be able to revive. The alternative possibility is that her figurative essence is in the sword, and she can't revive. She lives as a legacy, in spirit. If we return to the idea that a person is their values, then in a metaphysical sense, she continues to live. She becomes the means to reassure him that people can change, grow, and find meaning in hardship, rather than an excuse to neglect its reality. The interactions they have serve as a catalyst to maintain his resolve in whatever he chooses to do in the future. The hero doesn't just carry her death, he carries her transformation. He becomes the vehicle through which her lesson survives. That's where legacy becomes an act of heroism. If we assume the former, it sounds like the best ending, but we have to remember we don't have that luxury. If nothing but death can change our ways, then we must ask ourselves if we are truly committed to our ways, and if they truly hold that much importance to us. And if we assume the latter, it may give us a starting point to the question of why we are the way we are. But like the former, had the queen been willing to confront her situation before mortality forced her, she could have had a more obvious happy ending. Now to end with some food for thought. When I first wrote this script, I wondered if the beginning was a waste, just a recap of events anyone could have seen by playing the game. Perhaps. Let me know in the comments if you felt this way. But maybe those early details weren't filler, but rather they were context, necessary bricks to build the questions that followed. And maybe that's how our lives work as well. We dismiss entire stretches of time as filler arcs, but even the slow episodes shape our sense of self, if we're willing to reflect. Most of the details I mentioned in this video sound a lot less profound now that they've been written into the script than when I first noticed them. Repeated exposures to ideas without doing anything about it is sure to desensitize us until they cease to show value, and then they cease to be important altogether. And I believe the way to extract the most benefit from this video is to speculate on how the themes and conflicts presented pertain to us. In what way do I resemble the queen? In what way do I resemble the hero? Etc. Whether you came here for a game analysis or something more, I hope this gave you something to think about. The queen, the hero, and maybe yourself. We may not fight with swords, but we all have our thrones and the fear of what happens if we ever leave them. Thank you for watching.